This is what we're making. This is a partial bezel for a faceted stone. So you can see that this part is the full height, but the side of the ring here doesn't have anything on it. It's just the chenier, the regular chenier. Then we have bigger chenier soldered on the outside for our bezel. And to make this, we're using a 4mm faceted stone. Well, this inner bezel is 4mm, and we're going to slice a couple of bits of this, which is 4mm inside diameter, and use that for our tabs or our partial bezels. So the first thing we'll do is slice a couple of pieces off this and solder it onto our inner bezel. The large diameter chenier we're using is 4mm long, and the small diameter chenier is 3mm long. So the large one is a millimeter longer, and that's so that we have 1mm sticking above with the larger tubing so that we can use that as our bezel. So I want 2 pieces of the larger chenier, the same width as my ring shank. In this case is 3.5. Set your verniers, and you can just drag the back of the vernier down the chenier, and it'll leave you 2 nice little lines to cut to. Hold your chenier in your parallel jaw pliers and use a nice sharp blade. And make sure you cut on your line. Continue. 2 pieces. Save the other bit for later. Take a scalpel or your knife or something sharp and take the little rough bits off this, and then we're going to solder it onto our inner bezel. So we're going to take a nice fresh charcoal block because it'll be nice and flat, and then we're going to place our pieces with the flux brush. And the flux will actually hold these pieces in place. And you want to get it so that they're perfectly opposite each other. Now if we dry this out, the flux, when it cools off, will be hard and it'll hold these perfectly in place. Then we can place our solder, heat it up again and solder it. So just gently on and off with a soft flame. The flux will go crusty white, and at that point you can stop, and it just acts like glue to hold it together. Place your solder using your flux brush, and we want it to touch both the inside and the outside pieces. And we want to gently heat this, making sure that our solder stays in position. Once the solder's in the right spot, just circle. The solder will flow. And while this is still hot, pick it up and shift it, and it's just so that the flux doesn't stick to the charcoal. So quench this and pickle it. So measure your finger with a ring sizer. Use the diameter plus the height of the wire times 3.14 to get the length. And you can either solder that together at that point. It doesn't have to be a pretty solder joint, but it's just so that you can hammer it up and make it perfectly round. Or you can take that length, subtract this, which is your outside diameter. It is 4.85 millimeters, and then you need to curve the end of your ring shank to fit the curve of the chenier. Make sure it's well annealed, make sure it's perfectly round, and we're going to then solder it together once it all fits. I've cut my ring shank to the right length, minus the 5 millimeters for the tubing. Brace it against the end of your bench peg, file it perfectly flat, and now we're going to curve it so that it fits our tubing. So you can either use a cylinder burr or a round burr, or you could use a round jeweler's file. But I'm just going to hold this nice and snug in my fingers and use the round burr. So we cut it a little bit, hold it against our chenier, have a look, and we want this to be a perfect fit, both ends.